We all might want love and we might want a magnificent relationship, but that doesn't mean that we're actually capable or have the tools and the skills to be able to do so or to have so. Hey everybody, this is Bianca. I am so grateful that you are joining me here today for another video where we are going to be diving into all the fun stuff regarding vulnerability and relationships. So, relationships are one of the most critical components of being a human. Relationships are what allow us to understand ourselves better, to have, really wonderful experiences of the world. It helps us to understand who we are. It gives us a semblance of belonging. We learn how to navigate the world through relationships. And it starts off as family, and then obviously as we get older, that branches out into friendships, intimate relationships, coworkers, business relationships, whatever. And in every single one of these relationships, regardless of the type, regardless of the closeness of that relationship, one of the fundamental components in order for those relationships and for that relationship to be effective, to be mutually beneficial, in order for us to really get the benefit of relationships, there has to be a level of vulnerability. Now, vulnerability has been a pretty big word that's been going around, right? It started with Brené Brown and the massive TED Talk that she had that went viral. There is, there's tons of other speakers that talk about it, and researchers and clinicians and whatever. And we might logically understand vulnerability, and we might logically understand, like from watching those videos or just from, just general knowledge, that this is a really important skill set. This is a really important facet of relating and of relationships. But that doesn't mean that we actually feel capable of doing it. That doesn't mean that we actually feel capable of being vulnerable. It doesn't mean that we're in a position where we're ready to put our heart on our sleeve and be like, hey, this is me. This is what I feel. Don't hurt me. Because that's what most of us think. That's what vulnerability feels like. It's like, I'm going to expose myself. Something terrible is going to happen. And then I'm screwed, or that's the end of it. Makes perfect sense why people think that way if you actually understand the definition of vulnerability. So the actual definition of vulnerability is the ability to be punctured, or the ability to be injured, or the ability to, it's like exposing yourself to wounds. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to put themselves in a position where they are exposed to harm. And yet it's actually the only way that we're ever going to be able to have the kind of love and relationships and life fulfillment that we actually want. So we all know this. We all logically understand this. And we might logically understand why this might feel like such a terrible experience. But I want to dive into three bigger reasons why we struggle so much being vulnerable in relationships, just barring the obvious initial, I don't want to get hurt. So these three came from me working as a licensed mental health counselor for the last 8 years. This also came from my own experiences of trying to be vulnerable. Like, in order to get anything that you want in life, you have to risk exposure. You have to risk putting yourself out on a limb, being willing and open to being harmed or judged or criticized, because that's it's the only path toward doing something that you haven't done before. Like even doing this video, I'm risking right now being judged, being criticized, being harmed, someone being like, get to the freaking point, Bianca. I get it. So I get it from personal experience, and I get it from the clinical perspective that this feels freaking awful. It's never going to feel good. I'm just going to put that out there. Let's put some disclaimers right here, right now. Because by the end of this video, I want you to have a deeper understanding of why this is hard for you. And I also really want you to get the point that despite these things, you have to be able to risk it. You have to risk these things happening. You have to risk the harm in order for you to get anything that you want. So, personal experience, professional experience, it's freaking brutal, but it's the only way you're going to get the things that you want. So, let's dive into it. So, number one of the biggest reasons why we are afraid to be vulnerable, especially when it comes to intimate relationships, is because we are afraid to look weak, and we're afraid of being taken advantage of. Now, a lot of people, and same, right? This actually has been my experience too. A lot of people have had times and experiences where they have been vulnerable, where they put themselves out there, where they tried, where they dared greatly, to use, Brené Brown's quote. I actually think she took that from Teddy Roosevelt, so whatever it is, whoever wants to take the credit. But there have been a lot of times where someone has done that. They have dared greatly, and they had their freaking heart ripped out of their chest. Like someone saw their effort, someone saw what they tried to do, and they actually did harm them. They actually did induce some sort of harm. The person got really hurt because the other person had no ability or capability or desire or vulnerability within themselves to be able to accept the vulnerability of another person. I've done videos on this before, but there are certain times and certain instances where vulnerability actually is weakness. So for example, I'm going to give the dumbest example I can ever possibly give, but bear with me. If you have a massive gash on your arm or your leg, and you go to the zoo, and you walk into the lion's den, and they smell that, you're cooked. You're done. That is real vulnerability. There is a real threat. I am bleeding. That thing literally sees me and it's like, oh, look at my dinner, and you're going to die. Again, stupid example, but there are real instances in the real world where that is also true. If you are in relationship, or if you know somebody that is incredibly critical and cynical and does not have the capacity for vulnerability within themselves, that is the wrong person to try to be vulnerable with. Because they do not have the skills, capabilities, capacity, curiosity, compassion, courage, all of these necessary prerequisites to be able to take your vulnerability, to see it as courage, and then to be able to celebrate that with you and do something with you about it and for it. A lot of the times too, we grew up in homes where vulnerability got us harmed. where if you cried or if you exposed weakness or whatever the case may be, you were punished or you were hurt or something bad was going to happen to you. So you learned, bottle everything up, keep everything tight to the chest. Don't ever expose anything because I actually am in danger here. This happens far more often than we want to admit. And what it ultimately does is teach us that everybody is a threat, that everybody is going to induce harm, and that you're better off keeping everything tight to the chest, never exposing yourself, never risking harm, never risking judgment, never risking anything, but then you actually never get what you want. You never learn that not everybody is going to do that to you. You never learn the skills to be able to intentionally be vulnerable. And then you never get the benefits. You never get the benefit of love. You never get the benefit of putting your heart out there and giving people a chance and an opportunity to give you love, to give you those things that you need. Not only that, but like even vulnerability in a job, vulnerability in creating something, putting a piece of artwork out there. I recently listened to the new Rosalia album, and I'm so late to the game. I'm pretty sure this came out last year, but I didn't think to listen to it. And I listened to it and it was like, oh my God, this is extraordinary. This is amazing. It could have and would have been so easy for her to not create that, to not make, a beautiful album like that. Everyone's like, oh, you're going to put 13 languages in an album? That's stupid. She could have so easily been harmed, ridiculed, made fun of, but she risked it. She risked vulnerability to create something magnificent that now millions and millions of people have listened to, me included, so much so that I'm talking about it here. So yes, we're afraid to look weak. Yes, it's very scary having the idea of being taken advantage of. But you're also guaranteeing that you never get the benefit. Which leads me to number 2. So we're afraid that we're going to be taken advantage of. We're afraid that we're going to be perceived as weak. But not only that, in tandem with that, we're afraid and we believe that we do not have the skills, the capabilities, and the competencies to self-regulate in the aftermath of it. We don't believe that we have the ability to cope. A pervasive issue that we have as people is that we think emotions are bad. We think that emotions are dangerous. We think that having an emotion means something negative about us, that we are weak, we're incompetent, we are not capable. And this has been passed down from generation to generation to generation because our elders and predecessors and whoever grew up in times and in environments where for them it actually probably was true, right? In World War II, if you're sitting there complaining about, I don't know, whatever, someone might have looked to you and been like, do you see like all the people dying? Like, who cares? Not to say that that makes it okay. And that was the stupidest example, again, I could have ever thought of. But there have been so many generations prior to ours right now that have had really harmful, destructive messages of don't show your emotions. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to be there for you. Buck up. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get going. So when those messages are passed down, we start to believe them, we take them in, and then we're never taught the tools to manage emotions healthily, adaptively, productively, because you're just supposed to stuff them away. So who was going to teach you? These are the things that we are supposed to be taught at home with our families. This should be taught in school, but it's not. And then just throughout our lives, throughout the experiences that we have, that's why challenge and difficulty and hardship is actually a really good thing, because you get to learn how to manage. You get to learn how to grow. You get to learn how to get and become better. But when negative emotions are bad, when challenges are bad, then you're never going to put yourself in the circumstances and in the situations to be able to develop the skills. You're never going to surround yourself with people who challenge you. You're never going to put yourself in situations and experiences where you have to learn these things. You're certainly never going to go to therapy. And you're definitely not going to risk vulnerability, because if you're just going to get hurt and you don't have the tools to handle it, then it actually isn't a smart thing to risk it. But again, that's based on a massive predisposition and a presumption that you can't handle it. And the reality is, you're not going to learn what you're capable of until you risk it. Isn't that the ironic thing? It's the annoying thing, but it is the ironic thing, and it is the paradox, and it is the truth. You're never going to see what you're capable of, and you're never going to learn the tools and the skills if you don't put yourself in the arena. If you don't put yourself in the situations and in the circumstances where you're going to have to be vulnerable and then have to have that potential risk and exposure. So number one, we're afraid to look weak or be taken advantage of, because sometimes vulnerability really has been weakness. Number two, we do not believe that we have the tools and the skills to cope or to self-regulate. And number three, we are convinced that we are going to be rejected or abandoned. And we're terrified of the notion of it. This seems like it's similar to number one, but it's a little bit different, because number one has to do with the fact that someone might hurt you, meaning someone might induce harm if you have shown vulnerability. So it ultimately becomes a belief that we carry within ourselves that vulnerability is weakness and therefore I shouldn't show it. This one is, I'm going to be abandoned. The fear that you are sincerely going to lose out on love, on relationships, on intimacy, that something terrible is going to happen to you because you opened yourself up. I had this experience once where I was with this partner, and it was not a good relationship by any stretch of the imagination. I should not have been with this person, but neither here nor there. And we were in a really, really uncomfortable conversation and a really heated, just a really heated discussion about a decision that this person was going to make that affected me. And I remember being so scared of losing this person, because part of the decision that they were going to make is moving to another state, and they didn't even tell me about it. I had no say in the matter, even though we were together for a long period of time, which again, terrible relationship. I don't recommend doing that, but it is what it is. We live and we learn. And I remember looking at this person, and I risked it. I full blown let myself be vulnerable. And I said, I need you. I don't want to lose you. And you're leaving. And this person had no capacity to reciprocate my feelings, no capacity to give me love the way that I needed, because they actually didn't have the tools. They didn't have the skills. They didn't have the capabilities. And they grew up with a mindset that vulnerability is weakness. So it actually was a dangerous situation for me, but I risked it. And I actually was abandoned. There actually was, it wasn't immediate, but it was not that long after where the relationship disintegrated. I actually was abandoned. And when you go through an experience like that, it's like, oh my God, I'm never doing this again. This was freaking terrible. But that actually wasn't the lesson. And I didn't know it until years later, when I actually really was thinking through this and I was trying to enter into new relationships and other situations. I abandoned myself. I was rejecting myself because I was afraid of the vulnerability within me, so much so that I allowed someone into my life who had no capacity to love me. And when we fear vulnerability, when we fear putting our heart on the line, we ending up in experiences that are harmful to us, that are hurtful to us, and that end up validating over and over again that we shouldn't be vulnerable, that it is weakness, that we can't handle it, and that something bad's gonna happen. The truth is, you might be abandoned. The truth is, you might be rejected. The truth is, sometimes you put your heart out there and you do something creative. You put out a new project, you try a new thing, and it is not met with the response that you want. The lesson in that for so many people ends up being never doing that again. That's the wrong takeaway. The real takeaway is, wow, I really tried. I did something really hard that a lot of people probably wouldn't do because it's easier to not be vulnerable. But I risked it. I risked something. And that makes me someone special. And I might have not done it in the best way. Maybe there's something I can learn from this. Maybe I can do it better next time. But I tried. That's the real takeaway. Now, it takes a little bit to get to that. It takes you doing these steps, right? Whatever the inverse of them is. So number one, allowing yourself to change the narrative that you have about what vulnerability is. Number two, learning the skills and the tools to be able to manage vulnerability by actually risking it. And number three, be open to the idea that sometimes something might happen and that's okay. Because of number two, you have the ability to manage it. And because number one, you're not living in the mindset and in the belief anymore that vulnerability is something bad. Vulnerability that is not utilized intelligently, that is not done consciously, that is harmful. And that's not real vulnerability. That's negligence in a sense. That's a lack of vulnerability, because real vulnerability isn't just spewing whatever comes out. It's sharing truths, sharing thoughts, sharing feelings, sharing ideas, sharing your projects with the people who have earned the right to hear it. And that takes time to build. Yes, it's scary being vulnerable in relationships. Yes, there is a chance that something might happen to you. But there's also the chance that it leads to something wonderful. There's also a chance that it leads to you having something so special. It leads to the possibility of you cultivating really wonderful skills and capabilities and characteristics inside of you that lead you to be more successful and fulfilled down the line. Vulnerability will always be scary. But what do you risk by not doing it? That's a better question. If this resonated with you, And if you're struggling with vulnerability, just like all of us, number one, you're human, welcome. And number two, you don't have to go through this alone. If you send me a DM on Instagram, you're going to be messaging me. You're not going to be messaging an AI or a bot or an admin or anything. It's going to be me that's going to answer. And we can have a dialogue about this. And I'll walk you through some things that you can do to help you be a little bit more vulnerable in safe, intelligent ways. I sincerely hope this video was helpful. And I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.